Welcome to this episode of Feeding the Wolf Possibilities. And today we're about to explore what is possible when you choose to live a life based on energy. And my guest is originally a chiropractor, but for the past 10, 15 years or so, he has specialized in the creative edge of energies plus consciousness, which really is the symphony of possibilities. And that's a modality we both facilitate. So I am welcoming you today, Anthony, as my energy expert.
Thanks, Katarina. Thanks for having me. Well, I love about energy expert. That's so funny because it's like, how can you be an expert on something that's so infinite, right? And it's such a personal and individual journey of gifting and receiving. So don't let the doctor part fool anybody. I became a doctor of chiropractic, but to be a doctor of energy, it's like, okay, cool. What would it take to actually be able to master infinite energy, infinite knowing, infinite receiving and perceiving and all that stuff? So, but it's a joy to be on the journey. And when the times, I'll humbly say, the times that I choose to function from that space of energy, life is easier. When I get in my head and I try to function from um, maybe like this reality's way of thinking about things, that's where I kind of get bogged down and tripped up and stuff like that. And it is really an ongoing journey for all of us.
Well, I wanted to ask you when you first realized that there were some kind of like wordless, non describable energy that could not necessarily be explained scientifically from your doctor's degree. Like, when was the first time that came into your world?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never been a huge reader, but the first book that I had ever read, I don't even know how I got through school, to be honest with you, but I was in chiropractic school and I read a book called The Celestine Prophecy, and I couldn't put it down. And that's a lot for someone with ADD, ADHD, and who didn't really like reading. But there was something about the book where, it was so long ago. We're talking about like 1995, you know? But like like right now, you and I are interacting, right? And there are energies that are being exchanged that we can perceive them, but we really can't see them. But in the book, it almost described what it would look like, right? And even if someone would appear to be nice to you, if they have like a secret agenda, like their aura, so to speak, would actually be these like dark, weird colors. But if there was this genuine exchange, their aura would look different. And I don't know, I just found it so fascinating. And I used to watch a lot of science fiction movies when I was really little. And I remember I actually cried once because I was like, why can't this just be real? You know? Because it really touched me in such a way. And so I would say, so that book, but then the chiropractic school, at least the one that we went to, one of the first things you learn is that the power that makes the body heals the body. And they didn't talk about God, they just referred to it as the power, right? And that there's an innate intelligence within all of us. There's a consciousness, right? And what you and I both do is we work under the umbrella of access consciousness. And so that was wonderful. And it was like, wow, you mean we don't have to direct our body to do anything? It kind of just has this innate knowing of what to do. And so I was like, that was really cool. So that kind of got me on the journey of like, wait a minute, this stuff with energy is actually possible. It's not just science fiction. And oh, by the way, we are sort of being brainwashed. It's funny because they'll say the chiropractors were being brainwashed. Well, what if we're being brainwashed by Western medicine, right? And so, but consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. I am grateful we have medication available to us when required. But I feel like we've gotten away from trusting this beautiful miracle called our body and the consciousness within the body. So that's kind of when it began. I would say like 1995 while I was in chiropractic school, but I didn't really start to truly access it. But through access consciousness, the way that it like literally consumed me to the point where I'm like, it was not only something that I knew here, it's something that I'm like, I felt it in my like soul, if you will, in my being.
It's interesting. First, I want to mention the thing you said about, kind of crying that why can't this be true? I've had similar experience as a kid where I would lay at night and I was like, think of all the fantasy books that I read that made me so much happier than the life I was
Yeah,
experiencing around me. And really praying to something
right.
that could be true. So I wonder if there is that innate knowing that you talk about. I wonder if that is part of the knowing that is actually tapping into what is possible. It just doesn't necessarily look the way you see in the books or read in the movies, but there is an energetic core vibration that we're aware of, even as kids.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's how we ended up where we are now.
Mm.
And we didn't give up, right? Because it's like everywhere around us, maybe with the exception of like nature. And then if you're lucky enough to meet like a mentor, so to speak, when you're young, you know what I mean? You kind of feel alone on the journey, right? Because I started to realize that not everybody thinks the way that I do, or even desires to know these things. And I didn't know that, and I was very naive in that process. And so when I would speak about the things that I would be observing with regards to the world around me, people would like look at me and laugh and say I was weird or I was too intense or something. And then certainly didn't learn about any of it in school, or at least regular school,
So,
So you doubt it, you doubt it, and then in that doubt, what I would do is I would okay, well then maybe this isn't true. Maybe it is a fantasy. So let me just try to fit in. And then in
mm,
the process of trying to fit in, I'd be miserable. And then I would go back to, okay, there's got to be something out there. And I would like pray. And sometimes it was to God, and sometimes it was to a religious God, and sometimes it was just to the universe. And God knows I've been all over the spectrum with regards to that whole thing. And then when you go through enough shit in life too, it's like you really start to lean into, what I found is, um, sometimes it can create a state of hopelessness for people, and people will actually commit suicide and take themselves out because they don't see that something else is possible. For me, thank God I was too chicken shit to take my own life, so I would just
mm.
like literally beg and plead. There's got to be something out there. There's got to be something out there. And I just never stopped searching.
Well, and you beg, plead, and ask, right? So,
Totally.
mm. Well, if we
Yeah.
go to like a more basic level, how do you how would you describe like an energetic ping? How would you, if somebody's just starting to kind of look for the energies that would guide them in life, where can they start? Like how do you start looking for energies?
We talk about the gut feeling. Like
Mm,
when you have a gut feeling about something, and it's like, to me, the gut feeling, which by the way is what they consider, I believe, our second brain. It's like it bypasses the cognitive mind, and it's like literally for me it's a feeling that I have in my gut. And I think that's where it comes from. And so to me it's like it's lightning quick, it's fast, it's knowing, but it may not make logical sense why it is so. So for me, to speak in layman terms, it's that gut feeling, and to me that's your awareness, that's trusting your awareness. And a lot of times it's a whisper.
mm.
It's a whisper. And so to me the gut feeling, if you will, is that whisper of consciousness that bypasses the noise of logic and reason. And a lot of times I've made a lot of choices in my life, even long before Access, based on gut feeling. And I would say most often than not, it's always led me down, I'm not going to say the right path, but it's led me on the type of path that I'm on right now.
But so what happens if you ignore energetic whispers? Do they come back? Do they hunt you down? Like what happens?
Well, what I've learned, even as a chiropractor, long before Access, what I've learned is sometimes you'll get smacked upside the head. You'll get that bitch slap from the universe, right? Or I've literally have seen it create chronic disease in people, or at
Mm,
least physical pain in people's bodies, because they're not listening. They're not choosing based on their awareness and also how their bodies are trying to guide them through the world, right? We
mm,
have built in navigation systems, and we dynamically avoid what we hear from our bodies and awareness. We
mm,
avoid it. Why? A lot of times it's not loud enough, right? Because our thoughts are more real, our feelings are more real, our emotions are more real than perceiving,
mm.
being, receiving, and knowing, right? And it's because we're not taught that. We're taught to thoughts, feelings, and emotions. How does that make you feel, right? So when those things are louder, you miss the whispers. And so what I've seen is people's bodies breaking down. A lot of people are walking around slumped over because like they're defeated by life. So I'm not here to say life is going to be perfect, but
Mm.
God, am I grateful to have this wonderful navigation system to have my own reality in a world that's full of havoc.
So when you facilitate a class, a symphony class or any other access class, how do you actually get those energetic whispers? Like, how do they contribute in the way you facilitate?
Well, they contribute big time, but how I get the energetic whispers is like I when number one, when people break up and start working on each other, their bodies and beings are basically giving me the information. I'm literally watching this symphonic energy taking place. And so, and here's another wonderful thing too. I'm getting goosebumps as we're talking about it. Like in the 3-day body class, we talk about how our body is a sensate sensorial organism that's giving us an awareness of the world around us, both seen and unseen.
Mm,
And so what happens when we're playing in the symphony energy, my body's giving me information, and I'm starting to use these whatever is happening in my body. I actually use that as information and clues of what to discuss to the class. Or sometimes I'll have an individual come up and lay on the massage table. I don't ask them a question. I don't actually ask them what they want to receive. I'm just kind of showing the class what you can create by just being with someone, right? There doesn't need to be this intention or anything at first. It's just being. And as we get going and you just be, their body and being is giving me information in that moment in time that I wouldn't even be able to remember once we were done. And
mm,
so I use that as information based on what their body and being is showing me, and based on what's showing up actually in my own physical body. Because it's not about me, it's about them, or it's about the class, but my body's saying, hey, this is what's going on here. Like, you may want to let them know. And always, people are like, thank you for saying that. How did you know? And I'm like, because you showed me. That's how I knew, you know? Let's say my neck starts to hurt and everybody's doing sessions. I may say, again, and it's not this contrived and it's not this linear, but I'll be like, okay, so what energy, space, and consciousness can you, as the person gifting the session, be to undo everywhere where the person receiving has like carried all the world's burden on their shoulders? And that opens up something. It's like, oh my God, how did he know that? Well, how I knew that is because that was showing up in my world, right?
mm.
So I'll formulate a question to the class based on what my physical body might be feeling, and I use it as a way for it to contribute to the sessions they're gifting and receiving.
So, with this, could you talk a little bit about trust? Trusting the clues, trusting the whispers, trusting you and the energy that you're perceiving.
Well, okay, the only thing that comes right with that is it takes time and practice. And I say a lot in class too, explore and play, explore and play. And part of that exploration was, oh, okay, this is coming up for me during a session. Oh, wait, you know that it's not about me. And then when I start to formulate the question, and I may say something to the person receiving out loud, or I'll formulate an internal question to myself and ask, okay, how can I contribute to this? How can I change it? And then boom, something breaks open within the session. That came through trial and error. That came with exploring and playing. And there was never an error. You can't fuck it up, right? But when you ask a question, if you do choose to ask it out loud and you do it from the true space of question, it opens up that session to a much more deeper, profound, and dynamic level. It just changes the dynamics of it.
So, do you know, with the Symphony of Possibilities, a modality developed by Dr. Dane here that we both facilitate, when it comes to the symphony, how does that come in training your energetic compass for life?
Yeah, well, something that I still have to remind myself, even after 10 years of working with the Symphony of Possibility tool and tools and energies, and is to not only be that space when I'm working on people and facilitating a class, but to actually be that space all the time. But I've also recognized, but I dynamically forget, that I am that space. It's who I am. It's who I be, right? And what I've learned over time, it's allowed me to listen more to the subtle whispers with everything. Like an example of that is, like, I don't know anything about plants and trees and flowers. I couldn't tell you the name of a darn thing. But if you were to come and see my home and what I've planted here and what everything's grown to, you'd been like, "Are you like an expert in like landscape architecture?" I'm like, "No, I swear I would literally walk into a nursery garden and I literally would feel this little ping, and I would hear in my head, 'Buy me, take me home.'" And then I would have to inquire with the expert about how much sun it needs, the soil, how much it needs to be watered, and all that. And sometimes I would actually talk back to the plant, be like, "I can't take you home. I'm sorry, it's just too much sun for you," But a lot, but that's never happened to me before, And like even things like furniture, because there's consciousness in everything, Katerina. So for me, when I get to be that space, I get to create a beautiful environment for myself that contributes to me on a daily basis. And that can show up with like the foods that you eat. There's so many points of view about food that when I'm being that's the symphony energy with no judgment, total vulnerability, my body lets me know what it wants to eat and how much. And it's not because so and so says it's good for you or not good for you. Do you get what I mean? It's from awareness.
So, in a way, it's a practice of having that barometer or compass, whatever, open all the time. It's on all the time,
Always.
always moving.
Totally. And then I'm in more allowance of people not receiving me, which is interesting. I used to get very offended or feel very rejected, which is interesting because now it happens with my adult children. It's like for whatever reason yeah, whatever. But it's like, oh, I'm like, why are you going that way when you were brought up this way? And it doesn't have to be that hard, but that's where I need to be in allowance. And if I'm being that symphony space, I'm an allowance of their choices. When I'm not,
You have a
I
point
feel
of view.
like I parented poorly. I feel rejected. You know what I mean? I go into all those dark places of like where I fucked up.
Well, that actually leads me into when you become more congruent with your asks and more potent, you also have to become more aware. You have to use the tools of consciousness more because you are instantly gonna actualize what you ask for, even if it's like a big pink rabbit. So, what would be one of the key tools that you would say it's really good to have in your toolbox when you start playing and increasing your energetic capacities? You already mentioned allowance, right? So, allowance would be one that's really good to have. Anything else that you
Yeah.
would add?
Well, let's say more about the allowance thing because a lot of times people think allowance is acceptance.
True.
The acceptance still sticks you. one of the ways to get there is to literally be an interesting point of view of
Mm.
every thought, feeling, and emotion that comes up of yourself and of others. And it really helps you to not react to what people are choosing around you. And one of the things that I've learned just recently is if someone is on a path, maybe a destructive path because of the choices they're making, to be an interesting point of view, it allows them to still have infinite choice, right?
Right.
If I'm judging what they're choosing and I have this like vision or visual of like, okay, they're choosing A plus B, well, then it's going to equal C. Well, I stick them and me, right? But if I'm an interesting point of view, there is no A plus B equals C. It's everything, right? It's whatever is possible and it's their choice.
So if you would explain interesting point of view, like it has to do with allowance, can you give like if somebody wants to practice interesting point of view, what can they do?
Well, from this, I'll share with the way I've done it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view.
Mm.
Interesting point of view that that's what they're choosing. Not why are they choosing? Because I always like to try to figure out why people are choosing what they're choosing. No, don't do that. It's like, okay, they're choosing what they're choosing because they're just choosing it. It doesn't matter. Interesting point of view that that's their choice. Interesting point of view of the things that I might be aware of regarding the future. I
Mm.
look at that future and I say, interesting point of view. I have that point of view until that possible one future dissolves. And now it creates this infinite choice for them and for me.
Now, when you describe it, it's kind of like it's what keeps it moving. It's what keeps it being a symphony.
Well,
Mm.
and it's funny that you said that because the time in my life where I really had to use that tool in ways that I had never in the last 12 years of me being Access was when I was facilitating the opening of the symphony class in
Mm.
Mexico City. I was literally in the middle of this trauma and drama at one of the biggest classes I had ever facilitated so far. And I was actually just very vulnerable with everyone. And I shared what I was going through. But what we were able to get to with the symphony energies was so beautiful. And it's like, and what that showed me is that if by being an interesting point of view, it really allows you to access this miraculous space where you actually could have your own reality, even when someone you love is struggling. And that I never ever experienced that before, and it was so beautiful.
I think that is an amazing place to end this exploration on. Thank you so much for coming on, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you, Katerina.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. I hope you have more space in your world now. If you would like to listen to earlier episodes, share with other people, or subscribe, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or visit KaterinaValentin.com/